Coming up next on Arizona Horizons, Journalists Roundtable. Contempt of court hearings against Sheriff Joe Arpaio resume, and you know who is still the favorite for president among Arizona Republicans. The Journalists Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable. I'm Ted Simons. Joining us tonight, Jeremy Duda of the Arizona Capital-Times, Bob Christie of the Associated Press, and Mike Sunnix of the Phoenix Business Journal. Contempt of court hearings against Sheriff Joe Arpaio resumed this week, and actually they really got going yesterday and today with the Chief Deputy Jerry Sheridan on the stand. What are we learning here?
Well, we're learning a lot about this the so-called Seattle investigation from Dennis Montgomery guy who's potentially hired for a couple of kind of bizarre investigations. We learned that Jerry Sheridan still says he was unaware of this big ruling from a couple of years ago that barred the sheriff's office from doing these immigration enforcement sweeps. He claims that he was unaware of this ruling and they continued doing immigration enforcement for another year and a half. They said, well, you got emails about this. We haven't. Said, no, I never opened it. I didn't really look at them. I was unaware of this. Of course, picking up a newspaper or looking at the computer would also inform you that this ruling had come down.
Yeah, the informant was a biggie today. The email that was received but not opened, that kind of thing, was a biggie yesterday. They're kind of drilling down here, aren't they?
They are drilling down. There's three basic issues in front of the judge, which is they're trying to determine whether Joe Arpaio actually deliberately violated the judge's orders that he stop the racial profiling. One is that he didn't stop the racial profiling. Two is that they held these side investigations that looked at the judge and looked at some other things. And three is that they have a very poor practice of internal investigations over there. They had, the judge had ordered them to turn over 1,500 identification cards that these immigration officers or these sheriff's officers who were on immigration controls had seized. And they'd seized them from guys they pulled over driving down the road. And Jerry Sheridan said today, I knew that there was an order that I was supposed to turn them over, but I wasn't quite sure that it applied to these, so I wanted to talk to my lawyer first. This is a very well lawyered witness.
There's tons of lawyers. There's lawyers all over the place. KJAS had a very good story before these things started about the number of lawyers that are involved with this. You've got the Justice Department. Obviously, you have the plaintiffs in the racial profiling cases. The sheriff has his own lawyers. The county people need to have their own lawyers now because the sheriff dumped the county lawyers. So you got all kinds of, everybody's lawyered up. And we've kind of seen this MO before in some of these Arpaio investigations. Slow playing things, misinterpreting things.
Not sure.
Not sure what they're doing. But the question is how much is this resonating with folks outside of the courthouse, outside of the anti-Arpaio camps, outside of the media? Are we going to reach a tipping point to where people start thinking about, well, maybe we should elect another sheriff next year? The sheriff doesn't run. I don't know if we've reached that point yet here.
Well, a lot of it will depend on kind of how this plays out, because at the very end of this, Arpaio could end up facing criminal contempt charges. At the end of this, the judge will decide whether or not he wants to, move forward with this. Judge Snow, who at this point has, not a lot of love lost for Arpaio after, one or two investigations against him. If that happens, he'll have to refer that over to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and they'll make the ultimate decision. I believe Judge Snow could also find an outside prosecutor to do that if the U.S. Attorney declines. And, with another re-election, with his, 100th re-election or whatever it is next year coming up, that could, weigh down on him a lot if he really does face those charges.
When does this resonate, beyond folks like us, beyond the anti-Arpaio folks? Because there's folks that have elected the sheriff over and over again that like his stances on green baloney and tent city, and there's folks that like his stances on illegal immigration. But the folks in power, they haven't stepped forward yet, and the folks in power aren't impacted by some of Arpaio's policies because they're not poor and they're not Hispanic. So I'm interested to see if this ever goes beyond just the anti-Arpaio folks and the media doing their job in covering this, and there's folks in power, other Republicans, the governor, the senior senator, those folks, they're finally going to maybe step forward or the business community and make a push to get him out of there.
The chances that criminal charges either are going to happen or could happen, but let's meet behind closed doors. Why don't you go ahead and step down and we can just move on? How likely that an Arpaio resignation would be part of any kind of deal?
I think for the sheriff, who refers to himself as the sheriff,
sure.
I think that's highly unlikely that he would ever agree to do that. The sheriff has told anybody who asked, I'm not leaving the sheriff's office. I can be reelected as many times as I need to. And he's privately talked to our reporters and said, you know, as soon as I leave, I'm not in the press anymore. Nobody will think of me anymore. So he wants to keep his job, and he's dedicated to it.
And they'll play it. It's political. The judge is against him. The judge's wife is against him. The Obama, the administration, the Justice Department, they have a vendetta against him. They're trying to stop him from enforcing immigration laws. We've seen this kind of song and dance before. And I think even if there's a criminal contempt charge against him, brought against him, you're still going to see those same dynamics.
Sure, even if the worst happens, you know, he very well may get reelected next year. He's always been popular with voters in the county. We don't know if he's going to really have a credible opponent. So far, he does not. There's folks trying to draft some candidates in, but so far, there's really no one out there who's declared an intention to run who could really take him on.
Right, and as far as contempt goes, it's not something that'll get you a year in jail, right? So you have a civil contempt. Let's say the judge finds him guilty of civil contempt in this case that's going on right now. Then the judge decides, okay, I'm going to refer it for a potential criminal contempt charge. You know, he could fine him, but no one's talking about putting the sheriff in jail. He's 83 years old. Next year he'll be 84, and by the time it goes to trial, knowing how many lawyers he has, he'll be 85. If it goes, I don't see it happening.
All right. Something that's definitely happening is that the Arizona Corporation Commission, which was once a low-profile affair, is in the news constantly. We have now a public records snafu. We talked about this on the program this week, but again, it sounds like inaccurate and incomplete information from the Corporation Commission by way of a public records request.
Yeah, we used to go years without talking about the Corporation Commission. Now we can't go a week. But the latest, well, one of the latest from this week is, this group, the Checks and Balances Project, based in D.C., Pro-Solar Group, has been hounding the Corporation Commission for public records, specifically emails, text messages, and whatnot concerning Commissioner Bob Stump. They turned over a collection of emails. This week, it turns out, we didn't actually give you all of the emails. Here's another dozen that we found. And by the way, we also forgot to mention there's a tablet, there's an air card, and the phone that we told you he had, he actually has a different phone. So here you go.
Right, it's bad for credibility of any public agency when you delay production of public records, and then the public records you do produce are at best sloppily gathered and produced. I think the Corporation Commission has problems that extend far beyond this particular issue.
The integrity of the commission. We had Commissioner Bob Burns on the show this week. Even he admits the integrity of the commission is at stake here, and it doesn't look very good.
No, it doesn't look very good. All the APS stuff with the dark money for the latest two guys that were elected, and they've had pronouncements. A lot of folks on the Republican side pronounced about how they don't like public records requests. They're onerous, but then when they don't produce them accurately, is it willful? Is it a misstep? Are they misleading people on purpose or purposely on accident?
And we had another complaint against Commissioner Bittersmith this week. Similar idea being that she shouldn't be a registered lobbyist for telecommunications firms when telecommunication firms are appearing before the commission. And again, she says, but that's that part of the I represent this part of the telecommunications.
Correct. She works as a cable industry association lobbyist, and she also works as a lobbyist for Cox Communication on the cable side. She says, I never do any work for the telecom side that's regulated by the Corporation Commission, and there's a fine line, there's a hard line there between those two. I do not have a conflict. Others beg to differ in a great way. There's a complaint that's already been filed with the Attorney General asking him to remove her or start removal proceedings. And then this week, 2 more were filed by a group that also attacked Tom Horn last year and some other folks that were filed with the Secretary of State in clean elections. So we've got a trifecta of agencies who are being asked to look at Susan Bittersmith.
Public Integrity Alliance, I think, was that group. A very familiar name from the Russell Pierce and the Tom Horn situation.
Correct.
Sure, that and for some legislative races, some other more low-profile fights, they're kind of all over the board. And another complaint, actually, we had this week, in addition to Commissioner Bittersmith, we had Bob Burns, your recent guest, who was the last commissioner, I believe, who did not have some sort of complaint or something against him over there of the 5. And you had kind of an activist up in Sedona who, similar allegation to what's going on with Susan Bittersmith, is that he was, prior to getting elected to the Corporation Commission in 2012, he was a lobbyist for a telecommunications group, and he is still registered as a lobbyist for that. Now, Commissioner Burns says, he quit that job when he went to the CorpCom. There's a paperwork snafu. His name was never removed. some people, such as this activist, don't seem to care, think he should be bounced too.
One of the big things that always hurts their argument is Cox Communication has spent years of advertising and promotions to bundle your services. You bundle your telephone with your internet. I do that. They gave me a better deal. And when you say they're separate, well, I don't think consumers or regular folks see that. And when you're a registered lobbyist for an association or a company, who are you working for? You're elected by the people. You're supposed to be a regulator, and you work for the people of Arizona. You don't work for a company or an industry or an association.
It just all seems so cozy. It just seems like it's so unnecessarily cozy. And yes, there may be a line there, and if you really want to drill down again, to use that metaphor, you might find something. But goodness gracious, you're supposed to be regulating for ratepayers.
That's correct. It does seem too cozy. Now, of course, the reason that all of this is in the news really has to do with Arizona Public Service and, in a lot of ways, a charge that they want solar customers to pay. 2 years ago, they tried to get solar customers to pay a monthly fee to offset their use of the grid, because when you put solar on, you don't buy as much electricity. Therefore, APS doesn't have as much income to support the grid, the power plants and the transformers and all that stuff that brings the power to your house. Well, so they got a $5 increase a couple years ago. They came back this summer and said, oh, by the way, that $5 increase isn't enough. We wanted $21 a month. And the solar people went nuts. And they today pulled that proposal. It actually said, listen, we'll pull that proposal if you'll instead do an in-depth look at whether indeed there is a cost shift between solar customers and non-solar.
So basically, a lot of this was, and there were a lot of questions regarding that increase and the fact that the pro-APS, you know, you have to refer to these commissioners as pro-APS because that is the general consensus and impression. They were saying, let's do it at a hearing as opposed to the general rate hearing later on, which everyone else thought might be a good idea. That's all what, under the table now?
I guess so. I mean, this was kind of surprising in that it seemed like APS was well on its way to getting what it wanted. You know, they wanted to do this outside of a rate case in 2017, do it earlier. So they got the three, pro-APS commissioners, as you said, to vote for this. I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's minds that once this went up for a hearing next year, they would get to that $21. Today they say we're not pushing for that anymore. And perhaps this is kind of an acknowledgement of the perception that people are talking about, of the fact that a lot of people view APS as basically controlling the Corporation Commission now.
You know, what APS said today is that this whole process, which they went into with good faith, has been hijacked by these attacks from the solar companies against corporation commissioners and against APS, and they want to call a timeout, and they said, okay, let's just look at who's right here on the cost shift.
But isn't it interesting, though, that if there is a thaw here, the thaw comes from APS and not the commissioners? I mean, shouldn't the commissioners, one of the three, been the first one to say, maybe we should consider this?
In the past, the Commission, when we haven't reported on them, there's been people that view themselves as regulators on there, that look at the rates, that look at nuclear energy and energy sources and regulators. The folks that are on there now are viewed as lobbyists for the industry and folks that are flacks for APS. And it's a weird job because you're somewhat regulator, but you also run for office, so you're a politician.
Quasi-judicial.
And you're partisan. And so you have some crossover there. In the past, when we had this board hasn't had a lot of negative press, it's been more regulatory focused. Now it seems to be more who you're in bed with.
All right, we'll see what happens next week as we await further headlines. Not the only Arizona Commission making headlines. Go ahead, Mr. I'm responsible for getting 3 people out of resigning from their positions.
Well, actually, I feel like it's probably Senator Kimberly who bears the real responsibility here, who uncovered this about a month ago at a committee hearing over the legislature, the Industrial Commission of Arizona, which is primarily responsible for overseeing workers' compensation, occupational safety and health issues. It's a 5-person appointed board. They don't, it's an unpaid board, but they get per diem payments. And during a hearing to determine whether this agency should be reauthorized, Senator Yee noticed, wanted to know, well, how much in per diem payments are these folks getting? Most only get, the $50 per diem for meeting days and for a day of preparations, about 30 to 40 meetings a year. There were a couple, Chairman David Parker and Vice Chair Michael Sanders, going quite above and beyond. In fiscal year 2015, Parker claimed 253 per diem days, 292 for Sanders. There's only 251 work days in a calendar year, by the way. And ultimately the amount, in the terms of state government, there's a drop in the bucket, 12,000, 13,000, 14,000, but you start looking through the logs at what they were claiming per diem for, any day with work-related activity. On most of them were reviewing materials, but some days it was exchanging some emails. One guy, one of them, I believe it was Mr. Sanders, claimed $50 per diem for reading an article in the Atlantic Monthly about the Granite Mountain hotshots, which they oversaw. And I know those are long articles, but $50 for that seems, excessive.
Emphasis here again, 251 work days per year. Both of these gentlemen applied for more than that. I mean, 253 and what was the other one? 292 days of work.
It appeared egregious enough that as soon as it hit the press, thanks to Jeremy's work and the Associated Press moved a version of his story, and then the Arizona Republic chimed in, and suddenly this week, both those commissioners and the executive director over there resigned. Now, Governor Doug Ducey's office, of course, I called him up immediately and said, well, have there been calls from the governor's office to the to the Industrial Commission requesting their resignation? And they would not answer directly other than say, the facts speak for themselves. It was time for a change over there.
They're politically swimming with the fishes, right? It was they got the call. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's good that we have some oversight both from the media and from somebody in the legislature. We've had a lot of problems with some of these boards lately. Beyond the Corporation Commission, the medical board, some of these folks are political appointees, partisan, good old boy stuff. This is one of the panels that actually does some work. They hear cases and stuff, and they did a lot of work during the fires and those types of things. But when you got to have some judgment there when you cross the line of opening an email and getting $50 for doing that.
What does the law define as work activity? I mean, could reading a magazine article about the hotshots be considered work activity?
Well, certainly it could, and that was one of Senator Yee's points in this committee hearing, is that the law does not define what is work-related. And keep in mind that there are 200+ boards and commissions in the state with appointed members who get per diem, and Senator Yee is now looking at making sure that an occasional committee hearing or newspaper article are not the only accountability. She wants kind of an overhaul of this system. She wants to start looking at per diem, agency to agency, how much they can claim, what counts as work-related activity. She wants to make sure that this does not happen again. And when she introduces this next session, based just on this alone, it's hard to imagine there being much opposition to this.
I think we'll see some more public records requests from people in the media and all those watchdog groups that cause so much problem to see how much people are spending.
The issue is, as Senator Yee said, you appoint people who you hope are good, solid people who are doing this as a public service, working on these boards, and you expect them to do the right thing. It appears maybe these people were stretching it a little bit to line their pockets.
Sometimes there's a culture of entitlement among folks that are in politics, they're in partisan politics, that are cozy with folks and get appointed and stuff, and that seems to come out sometimes in cases like these.
Yes.
And I'm sure, for these kinds of boards and commissions, I mean, there is a lot of work you do have to do, but you look at the rest of their colleagues, the rest of these folks are not claiming this.
Right.
Even though, Parker said that his workload increased when he became chairman, and that is very much reflected in his per diem payments if you look back at the past 5 years. But the guy who replaced as chairman didn't do that. The former vice chair who left earlier this year, she didn't do that. For the rest of them, it's 60 to 80 per diem days per year.
And this is an important commission. I mean, the Industrial Commission is responsible for enforcing the state's workplace safety laws. They have inspectors who go out and do OSHA inspections, essentially. They fined the state $400,000 for the Yarnell Hill deaths, which was eventually settled. They're right now, the Department of Corrections is facing a $14,000 fine for the rape of a prison teacher, and that case was supposed to go before the commission next month. Now they're in mediation, but those folks have to sign off on all that, and they're the hammer of this. They protect workers.
Yeah. All right. Well, good work, Jeremy, on that one. Mike, latest poll of Republicans regarding Republican candidates for president shows Donald Trump still took a drop after that last debate, and Ben Carson still number 2, took a drop after the last, but they're still 1 and 2.
They're still 1 and 2. You see it nationally too. Maybe the Trump mania is wearing thin a little bit, and his act is wearing thin somewhat. But he's ahead 23%. Carson's next, Farina, and then Rubio. I think what it's kind of shaping up both here in Arizona and nationally, it's not more outsider insider stuff. It's more Tea Party versus establishment. So I think you're going to see you got Trump, Carson, and maybe Ted Cruz on the Tea Party side, and then Rubio, Carly Farina, maybe Jeb Bush on the kind of more moderate mainstream side. And I think as the race narrows and more folks drop out, the Arizona poll showed some Christie and Kasich, down there, Rand Paul down there in the low single digits. As more folks drop out, and as we see kind of Trump's numbers kind of level off, you'll see people start getting behind one of these candidates.
Did I notice the Cruz campaign? A lot of local lawmakers, state lawmakers, jumping on that.
There were a few who signed on this week. The more conservative Tea Party types in the legislature signed on as to Ted Cruz. Scott Walker dropped out this week. That was very interesting because he's among the bottom tier candidates who couldn't get over 1% to 2%. Of course, Doug Ducey is a big fan of Scott Walker and had him over, come and visit him early this year. What's interesting is what Walker said when he dropped out. He didn't just say, I'm dropping out for the good of the party. He said, I'm dropping out for the good of the party, and I think a bunch of more people should drop out so that Donald Trump's don't get the nomination.
Yeah, as long as there's 10, 11, 12, whatever people in there, Trump's got his 25% or whatever it is. He's going to lead, and until we get more people out of there, he's going to be up there in the lead. Now maybe he runs out of gas, or his gaffes finally catch up with him. But then maybe Carson and gets all those votes, or Cruz. So if the moderate folks, the mainstream folks, want to get somebody in there like Rubio or maybe Carly, you're going to have to see more people get out of there.
Well, you're seeing the attrition happen kind of faster than I think we expected. I mean, Walker, when in this race first started, he looked like one of the absolute top contenders. Nationwide, conservatives love him. He's done a lot of conservative things in a very blue state, and he just never got the traction. So far, it looks like Rubio is kind of, picking up the pieces from that. He picked up a lot of Walker's fundraising people. You can see, in this poll, and I think in polls nationally, he's kind of reflected the same, where he's starting to gain some ground. He's the only double-digit candidate in this poll who isn't among the outsider set of Trump, Carson, and Fiorina.
There's a scenario where we could have the two, Cruz and Rubio, the two Hispanics, as the final two standing. We're a long ways off from that, but that would be an interesting dynamic.
But okay, first off, we're 4.5, 5 months out of the first elections yet, and no money has come in yet. Jeb Bush is sitting on more than $100 million, and then there's a lot more out there besides that. When you start seeing money flow into Iowa and money flow into New Hampshire, then you're going to really see how hard-hitting it's going to be and who has the dynamics to really win an election.
Before we go, education funding recommendations from the Governor's Classrooms First Initiative Council came out. We're also hearing word now that the legislative leaders have ideas regarding education funding as well. Just give us an overview of what's happening here.
Well, Classrooms First Council, they're tasked with kind of rewriting the state's 35-year-old formulas for funding education. And what we've learned this week is their work is pretty far from done. They're probably the biggest part of what they said is we want to equalize the funding between charter schools and district schools, but not with more funding. We're not trying to pump more money into the system. We're not trying to take any money away from anyone. So I'm not sure how you redistribute the slices of the pie without taking away from one and giving to the other.
They always default to charter schools. They love charter schools down there in the Capitol. The Republican caucus loves those. Anytime they have a chance to boost those, they are. They did have some stuff in there about showing more information on school level funding, school level performance, so parents can see that, so parents can see how their kids are doing versus this wide district stuff that nobody cares about.
But they also had an idea of exempting A-rated schools from audits and regulations. What is that all about?
Well, that's about putting your spending where it does the most good. The governor has called for much more school level decision making. One of the things in this proposal was giving principals more power to decide how to spend the money. The governor is really on board with that. So if you have an A school, then why are you spending all this money auditing? We should be auditing those who have real problems. The question is, our schools are underfunded. They haven't, we have this inflation funding lawsuit out there. There's great pressure to get more money into schools. Do you really want to, at the same time, start messing with the formulas? Because, that's politically tough.
A lot of stuff seemed around the edges, special needs, those types of things. They're looking to funding for that.
Sure, and another from the legislature, we're also seeing interesting proposals. You have Senate President Andy Biggs, House Speaker David Gowan starting to push a plan. They want a ballot referral to kind of deal with that lawsuit where not by putting more money in, by eliminating getting voters to approve, eliminating the need to fund it.
All right,
Right.
we got to stop it right there. Good discussion, gentlemen. Thanks for being here. Monday on Arizona Horizon, we will have the latest on trade relations between Arizona and Mexico, and we'll hear about an event that looks at the life cycle of innovation. That's Monday at 5:30 and 10 right here on Arizona Horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great weekend.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.